So I watched the video. 5 officers, 1 young black man saying he's trying to go home. They kick and beat him so badly that 3 days later, Tyree Nichols dies in the hospital. After a week of mass shootings in America, this news coming from Memphis, Tennessee, of all places, I should have learned a place where Dr. King was shot for trying to create a more civil society. This raises in me, and I know in you, a deep sorrow, anger, and for some here, a certain terror. It raises again the issue of what America's society has promised to itself. Is the promise to serve and protect or to beat and kill? Is the promise to be the land of the free and the brave or the land of the few who can rest in comfort? Is the promise to be a place where we pursue happiness or perpetuate inequities? Are we one nation under God, or are we one nation of broken promises? Now, while we have no national covenant, we understand these implicit promises to be broken. That rights, self-evident, do not extend to everyone. And safety and security means different things to different people when it should blanket our hopes for our lives and the lives of our children. So the question is, what will we do about it? As a society, we have work to do. We must renew our promises to keep each other safe. We must address the brokenness of our economic disparity and renew our covenants to see each other as siblings, not strangers. We here in Dallas might revisit the hard work we put in some years ago addressing a police budget that balloons beyond the edges of social need. And while we do this, we know that we will not stop this work until it is done. And I am sure of our commitment, but I am also unsure about American society today. I'm more sure about this church's ability to live up to its promises because we are practiced in making them. Today, I am sure that our place in the greater society of Dallas and Texas and beyond matters especially when the news is so full of misery and pain. I am assured in a moment of despair by the hopeful faces and lives of all of you who come here week after week to make this place what it is. And I am assured by the faces of our new members who joined here today. A pack of people hopeful in the qualities of our community. Here we are a living organization that lives in covenant with one another, that promises to build a certain kind of place, promises to build a just and free society that does not perpetuate the kind of pain that seethed in the violent arms and legs of the officers on that corner in Memphis this week. And the new members who come here, so hopeful, we ask, and they ask of us to live up to our promises. I want you to hear what the new members said of their hopes of joining this church. This week in our orientation class, we joined together and they said this about their hopes of joining. They said, "We enjoy being around like-minded people and want to get involved." That joining is symbolic of being active, not just to take, but to give back. That they want to raise their children in a community of compassion and love that guides their families' principles. that they are looking for a family and friends to belong to be welcomed by, to be accepted in. And that in some cases of the new members, this is the first place in their life where they felt that that could be true. And they said that they want the opportunity to be part of social change and spiritual journeys that don't stand still. And they said that they want to learn how to align their beliefs and values in their lives and to move from a feeling of being spiritually bereft to a feeling of being home. Implicitly, they understand the promises we make to one another, to be something important and to live out the values that we have stated together, to be part of something bigger than any one of our lives can create. Some of what they are expressing today and standing up here, like so many have done before, is that they come here to join our promise to one another, the kind we recite at the beginning of worship each week in our covenant. Because we say in an aspirational covenant each Sunday we gather, you and I promise to dwell together in peace, join me, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine, which is no easy thing to live up to and no easy demand on you. But it is the glue that holds us together. The glue is not the staff who work so hard to keep this place going. It is not the ministers who try to speak some truth into this sanctuary each week, even when the sermons are insufferable. What keeps us together, what holds us, is the promises we make to one another. These promises are not a statement of belief or creed. They are promises that despite our differences, despite our disagreements, despite our many backgrounds and experiences and traumas and hopes, we try and create a community of peace, freedom, fellowship, and divinity that is not contained beyond us but lives in our mutuality. You don't come here to affirm a set of beliefs handed down to you from on high. You come here to join in an endeavor to live into promises that we make to ourselves and to one another and to God, however you define God. These promises are about the pursuit of meaning and truth. What we agree on is that we are here to create a freedom no one of us can formulate alone. One that loves each other into speech and attempts at making a peace that we know we can mess up, but that we can also repair. When I say we covenant with one another, I just don't mean just the people in this room. I mean the wider community we exist in. I mean the large community of our faith which extends nationally and internationally. I mean the people who came before us, who paid for these walls and these pews and kept this place going before any of us were here because they believed in the faith that said your divinity matters and the free church must have a place to make a space for all. And I mean the people we are in covenant with who have yet to come here, who will inherit whatever we create, whatever stances we take, and whatever silences we keep. And when I say we covenant with the holy or God, I don't mean a God who's keeping score of your actions or reactions or moving obstacles as you move down the road. I mean your highest conception of goodness and purpose and truth that holds you in all of who you are. What I'm talking about is covenant, which is at the core of our faith. A covenant is not a definition of relationship. It is a framework of our relating. It claims that you and I will together in a common endeavor make the world a better place. It demands what we heard from Reverend Safford today in her reading when she asked us the question, how will you decide which beautiful, clumsy, and imperfect institutions will carry and hold your names, hands, and hearts? How will we live a life of the Spirit which inherently is solitary, but demands that our answers to these questions call us to live in the plural? At the core of this endeavor is the question, how do we belong to each other? A question worthy of our day as we digest the video on the news from yesterday. How do we belong to each other? Because every goal in this church, every strategic plan, every budget commitment, every staffing decision, every class and statement and action leads to this question, leads to the core covenantal question, which is not do you believe in a statement of belief we set before you, but rather will you be part of an organization that is in right relationship? My friend and colleague, Reverend Burton Carley, who spent 32 years teaching his Unitarian church in Memphis, said, a covenant creates right relationship through partnership without dominance or submission. He said, to freely enter into a covenant creates a bond of trust. Defining and strengthening that bond of trust is the grounding work upon which all our work is built. The basis of that trust is the acknowledgement of the integrity and sovereignty of the other and the mutual pledge to achieve together what neither can achieve alone. Our covenants are rooted in one of the most human capacities, our talent for making promises to one another. He said in a kind of abstract way, covenants are about the we that creates identity for the I. Our faith has a focus on the I, but to be in right relationship, we must honor the I, but not at the exclusion of the we. You getting that? All right. Burton taught that at the core of this faith and the well-being of his church and ours and the larger faith, that we might arrive here seeking for ourselves some spiritual truth, but we must quickly realize that we are part of something that is working for a greater wholeness. The church doesn't ask you to be the best person you can be in isolation. It asks you to be part of caring for the spiritual health and growth of each other, even to the point of inconvenience and sacrifice. I might say that this is actually the definition of love. Because here in this church, sin is not a broken contract that can't be repaired. It is a mistake ripe for reconciliation and restoration and the care of each other. And here, salvation is not a compact made with the gods, but rather it is found in our capacity to heal and be healed. Here we live to make lives better and communities better for higher purposes than our own comfort or agendas. Here we do not shrink from conflict, but as well we don't play games of conformity and coercion. Here, our covenant begins with some basic notions of who we are, that we are here to affirm the dignity of differences among us and to recognize our dependence on one another. That we are here to understand that we cannot sustain ourselves alone or create frameworks of collaborative action or collective grace on our own. And that to do the spiritual work of preserving our differences while we work toward a common good is no easy thing. It requires we seek to understand one another and not live in isolation from the people around us in the pews or in isolation from the issues of the day. It means that we can't just say we are tolerant. Rather, we must challenge ourselves to live up to genuine inclusion. It means that we have to grow the capacity to live in right relation with one another, even when we disagree and express things differently. That means that when we're committed to things like racial justice, we can't claim there is only one moral way to it. That anyone who doesn't agree with us or use some prescribed language is morally corrupt. It means that we have to commit to racial justice that celebrates our differences and unabashedly points to inequity without condemning anyone with a permanent stain or status on their soul. It means that when we disagree about the definitions of God or some theological notion, we don't go and create a separatist group where our position can be affirmed. We stay in the conversation and we stay connected. It means that we stay connected, bound by our common values in right relation to the end. That is why covenant is not just an idea or a procedure, but a way of being in the world, a way of being in relationship with reality. Whew. That's a lot, right? But what does it mean to you? At the core of my message to you today is this, that our covenants are promises that transcend things like resolutions. Resolutions are down here, while covenants hold us to a greater fidelity to each other and the world. If we're resolving to learn about institutional racism, that falls into a commitment to make society see itself, not only when a young man is beaten, but before and after. We do all this knowing that we are promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-healing, restoring people. That's at the core of who we are. People who understand that we do all this in the context of a constellation of people who care about our existence and to whom we are accountable. It means that our promises can't just live on our tongues on Sunday morning. To live in peace means to practice peace Monday through Saturday. To be knowledge-seeking people means we have to seek without demoralizing others or condemning their search. And to be of service to the fellowship of humanity means we have to see our common humanity as core to our life missions, to act for the good of all, always. To be souls that grow in harmony with the divine means that we have to see the promise of this work as holy, not just something printed on a piece of paper in your hand today. Now, I can't tell you how many times someone's come into my office and told me they were having trouble living up to these promises. My response is usually, so am I. Aren't we all? But we are promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-repairing people. We are not broken people who can't be repaired when we break. I have heard your stories. They are mine also, stories of broken relationships, infidelity to our higher values and the people in our lives, doing what we know we shouldn't do. I have heard all those stories. But friends, our faith says those aren't permanent markers on your soul. It just says we have work to do. To repair is part of our covenant of living together as a faith community and as human beings. And to live as a faith community is to be reminded of the painful challenges in our lives, as well as to remind each other that we are part of something important that extends past all of us. To be reminded to live in the plural. And we live in the plural especially when our hearts are broken, when the world needs repair. We can hold each other in a greater love despite our failures or the failures of the world. Or to put it as my friend Reverend Tondeica said, Here are the guidelines of engagement in church. No bitching. Love extends in all directions. Assume good intentions. Question with mutuality. Care for each other. And when all else fails, serve one another. Easy to do, right? Friends, this is no doubt a challenging time in our country and in our world. Our lives are lived in the context of wars and violence and pain and insecurity and injustice. And our lives are lived in the context of this place, a place of covenant and love and relationship and hope and caring for each other's spiritual lives and asking the question, how do we belong to each other? I extend my love to each of you today as I invite you closer, as we extend our hopes to our communities and country and love. And I demand of you today and this week that you live with this question as your spiritual homework. How do we belong to each other? If you inscribe that on your heart this week and pay attention to what happens, I want to hear about it next week. When you look up from that question, when you look up from the question, how do we belong to each other, I hope you don't just see me staring back at you. But you see the faces of the people of this congregation in all its forms, caring for your spiritual life, challenging you in your intolerance, cheering you into freedom, and loving you into wholeness. And to that, I say amen.